It is Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen, and if you're new to this channel, we try to make your hump day a little more fun by talking about Bulls hot takes, in which I feature your Bulls hot takes and my reactions to them. So thank you all for those who left your hot takes. I'm going to try and go through as many of these as I can, so you might see me go through these a little bit faster than normal. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Let's jump right into our first hot take, and this one comes to us from Hadi Hamed. Since the Nets always have no answer for Vooch, and since he always lights them up, if we match up against them in the first round, I think it could go to a Game 7. Also considering if our defense can become elite with Troy Brown clamping up Harden and Irving. So first of all, I think we all need to take a little bit of a step back and realize that although the Bulls played a great game against the Nets and played decent defense as well, particularly Troy Brown, who you're referring to, we also have to remember that the Nets' two best players, and yes, I believe those are the Nets' two best players, and James Harden and Kevin Durant, that they were not in the lineup. And when it comes to the playoffs, they're not going to be sitting out unless they are having serious injuries that won't allow them to play. On top of that, guys like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, James Harden, LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, they all have significant playoff experience, so they know what it means to take it up a notch when it comes to facing off against teams in the playoffs. I mean, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are both NBA champions with multiple finals appearances. Whereas for the Bulls, you have very few guys on this roster that even have more than one game of playoff experience. And I think as Bulls fans, we have to recognize that playoff experience is huge when it comes to playing in the postseason, regardless of how good a team may look in the regular season. So that's one point. The other thing is you mentioned was if our defense can be elite. Well, that's a pretty big if, because even if the Bulls, through the defense that they've gotten a little bit better by bringing in guys like Troy Brown Jr. and Daniel Tice, the Bulls are anything but close to being an elite defensive team. I think they can get better on defense, don't get me wrong, but not an elite defensive team that is going to be able to stop a super team like the Nets. So in short, if the Bulls happen to face the Nets in the first round of the playoffs, which is possible based on how the seeding could shake up, they're likely going to get swept. At best, make it a 5-game series. And that's, it's not a knock on the Bulls, or I'm not trying to be negative about the Bulls. That's going to be the case for a lot of teams against the Nets. I mean, this is a super team. We didn't see them fully healthy. They arguably have two of the top 5 players in the league in Kevin Durant and James Harden, and a top 10 player in the league in Kyrie Irving. And then they also have quality veterans in LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin coming off the bench. It's going to be hard to stop them for any team, which is ridiculous that they have a team that's that good, but sometimes that's how the NBA works. Next up, we've got, and sorry, that's a little hard to see. This one is from the Discord. It looks like Riff Simons. The Bulls will go on an 8-game winning streak against an easier schedule. So already off to a good start since the Bulls are on a 2-game winning streak. Let me pull up their next 6 games. So yes, the schedule is much easier than the Bulls have recently played. I honestly think their toughest matchup that are really going to be against the Raptors and the Hawks, particularly the Hawks, just because they have been playing so well recently, and it'll be on the 2nd game of a back-to-back for the Bulls. The Hawks offense is so deadly, and with the Bulls not being the best defensive team, you're really looking at whether the Bulls can win this in a shootout with the Hawks. I do think it's possible, but that's really the only game I see them that's preventing them from going on a large winning streak, because you're right. I mean, Minnesota, Memphis, Orlando, these are all games the Bulls should definitely win. That being said, it's a lot of traveling for the Bulls. They have 2 back-to-backs within this time period in which they'll be traveling to different locations, which is always a challenge in competing at a high level when you're playing that many games condensed in a short period of time. So I think it's possible the Bulls go on an 8-game winning streak, but you also have to understand that despite the easier schedule, when you have a lot of games like that close together, you're bound to have a slip up or two depending on how tired the guys get from all the traveling in games night in and night out. Next, this is from, is it Kairov? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. When I'm on my deathbed, the Bulls will win a chip. Come on, my man. I got the Bulls, I know they've struggled for a while now. We haven't won a championship since 1998, but you got to have a little faith. I think Now that we have a competent front office that is more focused on winning and creating a relevant franchise rather than just going the safe route and continuing to build for the future, you can be more certain that the Bulls are going to be competing for a championship sooner rather than later. They're not going to be titleists for decades, unless of course you're already in your 70s or 80s, which it doesn't sound like you are. Next up, this is from Flo Thamba Fan. We get another All-Star this offseason. Well, I think it's possible. The only issue I see with this take is that, at least as it pertains to free agents, there really aren't that many All-Star caliber players available for the Bulls to bring in. Really, it's just Kawhi Leonard at this point. And keep in mind, he still has a player option to remain with the Clippers. That's not to say that the Bulls can't bring in another quality, player through free agency, and I suspect Arturas is going to be aggressive in getting quality talent to supplement this roster. Now, the other avenue by which they could bring in an all-star caliber player this offseason is through a trade. The only challenge with that is the Bulls don't really have a ton of trade assets, given they just traded away their picks to get Vucevic, and you wouldn't trade Zach because he's one of our other stars. You can't really trade Markkanen right now because he's a restricted free agent unless it's through a sign-in trade. Coby White, Satoransky, Thaddeus Young, I mean, yeah, they have some trade value, but not likely enough to be able to get a star player in return for them. So I'm not saying it's impossible that the Bulls will get another all-star this offseason, but given what they're working with in free agency and the trade assets they have to exchange for one is unlikely. Now, they could certainly bring in a player that is up and coming and has future star potential, or maybe a former all-star that is still a quality player, but maybe a bit past his prime. I can see that to be a much more likely scenario. Next up, we've got Playboy Juju. The Bulls will continue to underperform and finish with the 12th seed in the East and get lucky in the draft lottery and get a top 4 pick. Well, I can see, why some of you may have chosen your glass half empty for your Bulls fandom. No, Playboy, I don't think so. I think the Bulls are on the up and up. They're not going to continue to underperform. It's clear they're finally starting to get acclimated with this new roster. Their schedule is now going to get easier, as you just saw. I would say it's very unlikely that they finish 12th in the East, third worst in the East, mind you. At least I hope so anyway. Otherwise, the Bulls have bigger problems. Sure, that would be nice to get a top 4 pick that is protected should they miss the playoffs, but no, I want my team to make the playoffs. It's been a long drought, and I want to see the Bulls compete at the highest level in basketball. Next up, we've got Free XSoul 13. Patrick Williams will score more based on Vucevic's usage. He'll average 13.3 points per game, 5.1 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 steal. I like this one better versus some that we've received in the past who said, Patrick would be averaging over 20 points per game. Like, guys, that's almost statistically impossible with the number of games left based on where Patrick is at right now. I do agree that Williams' scoring and just his offense in general will go up as a result of having a playmaking big man. I do think offense will, be more and more funneled through Williams, especially because I think the coaching staff wants to give Patrick more confidence and is encouraging him to be more aggressive on offense, and they're looking to develop him further. So right now he's averaging 9.8, 4.8 rebounds, 1.3 assists, and 0.8 steals with 23 games left to go in the season. I think the 5.1 rebounds you suggested is definitely doable. I think 1 steal is absolutely doable. I think the areas that are probably a little more unlikely are going to be, going from 9.8 points per game to 13.3. I don't see his offense accelerating that much for the remaining 23 games to bring his overall average to 13.3. I do think we'll start to see him score more, and that average will likely go up above 10 points per game, but 13.3 is a huge gap from where he is right now. And I know 1.3 assists to 2 assists per game isn't that drastic of a jump, but over 23 games to bring that average up is unlikely, especially when he still hasn't been the best passer. I think that will come with time, don't get me wrong, but not close, to the rest of the season. Next up, this one is from Caneras We're On. If Lauri Markkanen didn't have any injuries his whole career, he would have been an all-star by now. This one is interesting because, as we all know, Lauri struggled, or he missed significant time every season in which that he's been in the league. The most games that he played in a given season was his rookie year, where he played 68 of the 82 games available. I mean, it's possible that these injuries, although minor, have been holding him back from his true potential, especially with the way that he had started out so strong in his rookie and sophomore seasons. Even myself, I said the guy is going to be an all-star in the near future. He was really on that path. But then, of course, His third season, he really regressed. You could blame it on Jim Boylen, you could blame it on injuries, but I do think part of it is on Lauri. I don't think injuries are holding him back from being more aggressive on offense in the paint. I don't think the injuries are necessarily holding him back from playing with more effort on defense, and I don't think injuries are holding him back from shooting the ball more consistently. It may be a small part of it, but I don't think injuries are holding the guy back from potentially already being an all-star. Let's do one more. This one is from Prada. If the Bulls make the playoffs directly and not just the play-in, Zach Lavine will be on an all-NBA team. So you're saying the Bulls would need to make it at a minimum the 6th seed by them, missing the all-play-in tournament entirely, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility given how close the East standings are right now. But it will still be difficult to pull off. But let's say that they do. Let's say they finish top 6 in the East with the 23 games remaining. Would Zach Lavine be an all-NBA player? Well, the only issue I see with that is the Bulls, if they do make a big run with these remaining games, I do think a lot of the league is going to attribute that to Vucevic being added to this team. Now, whether that's fair or not, that's just how the league is going to see it. They're going to see it as the Bulls got another all-star, and that's how they were able to make a run like they have. Not that Zach Lavine willed this team to a top 6 spot in the East, unless, of course, Zach just goes off in these remaining games, which that's the other issue. Zach hasn't necessarily performed up to par since we saw him, pre-All-Star. Some of it is due to injury, but also some of it is his numbers are naturally going to decrease when you bring in another All-Star player, as I mentioned before. So it's not possible. I mean, he will get a lot of credit and recognition if the Bulls finish with a top 6 seed in the East, and it might be enough to get him an All-Star nod, but it also depends on if he's healthy and he can maintain some of the performance we saw him do pre-All-Star game. Then yeah, I could see him getting an All-NBA third-team selection for sure. I'll stop it there for now. I may come out with another upload later today, as I know there were a lot of other hot takes this week, so be on the lookout for that. Feel free to leave any additional hot takes you guys have below in the comments, and also let me know what you guys think of the ones mentioned in this video. Be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, as always, and I will catch you in the next one.